Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on February the 8th, 2022. I'm your host, gaming psychologist, and with me, as always, in his hazmat suit,
Caffeine Rage.
On today's show, we will be, of course, discussing the games that we have played recently. Gaming industry giants continue to consolidate their holdings.
How you doing?
Right? Hello. Hello there. Yeah, I'm alive.
It feels like you should have a Scottish accent whenever I'm muffling my voice like that, though.
The
Dark Knight.
Yep. You merely adopted the darkness. I was born to it. My bane. It's not very good.
It sounds more like a bad Sean Connery. Which, to be honest, even Sean Connery was doing a bad Sean Connery there towards the end.
I wake up in the morning and I piss excellent. I miss Sean Connery. God rest his soul. The first man I ever had a crush on. Anyways.
Well, that does explain, him shuffling off this mortal coil. It's to get away from you.
He found out about it. No. Anyway, speaking of the mortal coil, I'm still on it. I survived the COVIDs. They ran rampant through my office and then my house. It was not fun. But here we are on the other side, mostly.
You're saying COVID's no joke?
No, COVID is no joke. It's not very funny. I'm making a face. You can't see my face, but I'm making a face.
Oh, don't worry. I'm glad I can't.
That's fair. But yeah, that was an adventure. Thanks to both you and to everyone in my life and circle and that listens to the show who was very gracious to me as I was a very tired boy. And it's still like hitting me a little bit. Like last night, I did not play tabletop games because I sat down for like 15 minutes and then I was like, yep, I'm not moving again. Not till tomorrow, unless I really have to go pee.
And then it's, do I really have to get up to pee?
I mean, you know.
Do I really have to?
Nah, probably not. It'll be all right. But yeah, that's been my last week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's still going in other parts. My mom has it right now, so two somethings for that. Have mixed feelings. If someone wants to find out more about those, feel free to hit me up on Discord or Twitter or whatever.
I'm not saying a thing on this one.
Yep. I'm one subject that I'm probably gonna not talk about on an open mic per se. Although we did miss hearing or talking about like live when it was happening. That who was it that Joe Biden called a stupid son of a bitch?
Oh, it was a Fox News reporter.
Yeah. We missed talking about that when it happened because that was last week.
Yeah. Do you think inflation's going to be an asset? All right.
Yeah. No.
I mean, this is also the same reporter that McCain also went into.
Yeah, I didn't remember that, but I saw the articles going around. Like remember this? Remember when McCain was like making fun of this guy for being a big dummy? I was not interested in politics then, so no, I don't remember. But I watched the video and I had a good chuckle.
Yeah, and I also remember McCain becoming a big dummy by his running mate choice, or allowing that choice to happen for him.
Yep.
But to be fair, no matter what, he was not the biggest dummy in that relationship. Oof.
No, he wasn't.
No, she was just a harbinger of the things to come.
Yeah, it feels so weird to be like, remember the good old days when Sarah Palin was the biggest thing we had to worry about? Like, haha, she's kind of dumb and she makes weird jokes about guns and magazines.
And now,
oh boy.
Now political discourse as, unruly mob storms the Capitol.
Yeah. Political something. A quote, as the dipshit Republicans, some of them have said, a valid form of political discourse. A valid form of me just face palming all the way to an early grave.
How about a valid form of games we played?
Oh yeah, there we go. You did it. You saved us, Rage. Tell me about the games that you played.
Yeah, it turns out not so saved. So I played Evil Genius 2 World Domination on Game Pass, and ooh, kind of wish I didn't. So the first Evil Genius, it was early 2000s, I believe.
Okay.
Now I need to double check that one. It is, well, it still is, but it was a management game where you are an evil genius. I think 60s era Bond. Thinking, mentioning Sean Connery. Uh, and you are an evil genius bent on world domination in 2004, mid 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, bent on world domination, and you're building a layer trying to keep essentially under the radar till you could unleash your dastardly evil scheme. Evil Genius has that in common, only somehow they made it boring. And it's just disheartening. It's one of these games that feels like they played the original but didn't understand what made it fun. And one of the things that made it fun was the Rube Goldberg-esque traps that you could build up. Where, you could have the Shark Tank. No freaking laser beams, but you could have freeze rays, poison darts, and have it where a giant fan would knock somebody down a hallway into a freeze ray that would freeze them solid for your minions to just pick them up and carry them off to jail to interrogate them. But they time lock it. They time lock all the damn research for all the traps. They have it where the schemes to fund your evil research or your evil schemes, each one is an hour long. It plays like a damn mobile game on that aspect, where in the original game, they were pretty much just one and dones. They would go off, do the scheme, and if it succeeded, it was pretty much it, if I recall correctly. There was no, passive income of sending minions off to go for an hour and then, a few hours later have to go run another multi-hour scheme to balance out heat to prevent agents from showing up. But the thing is that even running fast forward, it just takes so damn long for things to happen.
Yeah.
It's the same problem that Dungeon Keeper had on mobile, where the time scale of everything just felt so absurdly long. Research takes forever to unlock stuff. And because there's so much stuff locked behind research, you either have to be on, like playthrough 2 or 3 to even have an idea of what to expect, or you're constantly redesigning your layer because, now I unlocked this upgraded thing. I have to tear down the entire control room and rebuild it. And when I tear down the control room, that pauses all the schemes. And if they're paused for too long, they fail and I have to restart everything. I have to, I upgraded the cantina to feed on my minions. Well, I can either build another one to supplement the first one, or, completely redesign that. And it's just tedious.
Yeah.
And it just feels like they lost all the flair to it,
Yeah.
And this is, mind you, after they fixed the game. When it launched, it had an abysmal just loading issues. It had abysmal bugs. So it's functional, but it's just kind of dull.
Yeah, I've never played the first one. I love the look of both of them. Like, they look, neat. Like, they would just be a lot of fun to mess around with.
I would say go back and play the first one. The first one does have its issues as well. The first one it has some wonky game design. And also, there's a difficulty curve that if you're unprepared for it, it can be rather brutal.
Okay.
So the idea of it is that, think of it as, your James Bond-esque super agents are invincible and can always get away unless you exploit a weakness to them, okay?
Okay.
And in Evil Genius 2, in order to do that, take one of the super agents off the map and defeat them for good, you have to go down what they call side stories. But you can only have one side story active at a time, and there's, I think, half a dozen super agents. And as you build up an amount of heat by building up your network or your criminal networks, you could have multiple agents active at a time on the world map. And if you complete a scheme while they're watching the world map in a particular region, they'll attack you. Right? But because the world map is so damn passive, you don't see them moving around or know when a scheme is about to finish until it's too late. I think part of it is just the fact that the game is so bad about telegraphing what information that you need. So, yeah, I mentioned, having to rebuild multiple parts of my layer. Like, one thing that is, since you're an evil genius, you can't just have a bank account. You have to have a vault somewhere to keep all your liquid assets, right?
Yeah.
So, in order to do that, you have to have pallets of gold in a vault. Well, in order to have the money to pay your minions, you also have to have a certain amount of money. Well, each pallet of gold could only hold so much money. So you could expand your vault. But eventually, you're going to unlock something that is better than a pallet of gold bricks somehow, right? But there's no simple way to quickly rebuild everything, and all the minions are on a cycle of every 10 minutes you have to pay them out, and depending on the amount of minions you have, there's a base minion, which is just your worker minion that does a little bit of everything, but not particularly good at it. Then there's muscle, scientist, and deception minions, each of which focuses on a particular style of play. And the more of each minion you have, and there's also different degrees. So, like, in muscle, there's your typical guard minion, which is essentially just dumb muscle. Then you have a mercenary, which you unlock after a while, and which is better at muscle-related tasks, but can only guard and do basic things along that area.
Yeah.
So security-related stuff like manning camera, security consoles, that sort of thing, to keep your views up on your base. But the thing is that if you're upgrading your vault and that 10-minute timer happens to take over, which, mind you, you are not in direct control of your minions. You could make suggestions on what to do, but, it's just, whatever the minions end up doing. You can have a morale problem because you miss a payday, which happened to me a couple times because I was in the middle of a redesign. And there's no really easy way to pause a design because you can't plan out everything and then just say, okay, build this layer. You have to have a valid blueprint for it to be submitted. So you can't plan out everything on like a floor of your base, that's one advantage of the new Evil Genius over the old one, is that you can have multiple floors. I think 5 plus a basement, which are unlocked in progression based on the amount of research, which the amount of research you could do is based on the amount of story that you could do. Because after the second tier of research, if I recall correctly, you need a secondary specialist scientist to unlock that research. Uh, there's just, like I said, there's a lot of interesting things going on, but the game just communicates so poorly. So you'll have it where there's an icon flashing on the like floor 2. No idea what it does. You click on it, it just takes you to the floor and just shows you, okay, there's something here that you need to pay attention to. What? No idea. The game will say, okay, well, you're running out of power after you submit a design to, upgrade a room somewhere else. And won't warn you that, by the way, this design will take your power generation to 0 until you've already submitted it. Because the warnings are all queued up to a certain degree, and if certain things are firing off before that, it will not tell you more important things. Because, right?
Right.
And this is all on top of trying to keep your base secure, so every so often, especially after you start working up a criminal empire, the forces of good will send investigators to see what's going on, because you're on this abandoned island running a casino as a cover operation. Well, the investigators always know exactly where your base is, the entrance to it. So you're just constantly getting bombarded with a trap has been sprung. There's investigators in the base, and it's just queuing up so many things going on that it's adding more important information about what I need to know, right?
Yeah.
Which I know, it sounds like, investigators are snooping around. That's important to know. Well, yeah, but they're always snooping around. They always are. It's just, like I said, this is coming from somebody that was a fan of the first one. And that might be part of the problem, is that, I know that the first game is so much more enjoyable, or at least, in my opinion, it was. It's been a long time since I played the first one. But there's just so much annoyance going on. And this is on top of having to just run absolutely massive generator rooms, because the game unlocks advanced text so slowly, and there's so few advanced items on top of it. So there's 3 maybe generators that you could do, but remember, you don't have direct control, and it takes time for things to swap over. So if you're building a new or upgrading an old generator room, your base is going to be vulnerable for quite a while, because all the minions are going to go through and deconstruct everything. Then they run off down to the helicopter pad, pick up the new generator, bring it back, then put it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like I said, there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of information that could be given a lot better, on top of just a sluggish pace for the entire game.
Right.
It feels like, and this is probably just because I'm playing the base game and not the season pass version, because of course there's a season pass that has another several campaigns and different additional side stories that you could do. There are 2 free DLCs that are actually Valve related. But I ended up screwing myself over on that one, because it doesn't say, by the way, make sure that you have this when starting the story. And mind you, once you start a side story, you cannot back out of it, which is irritating as fuck. I started the Portal side story, and suddenly I needed a lot more prison space than I had previously, with no warning whatsoever, so that meant I had to completely redesign a level of my layer, and I just gave up on, my kid, and I just gave up on it at that point, because I just couldn't be bothered.
Well, that sucks, I mean, it sounds like the game, very broadly speaking, is missing a lot of quality of life features from certain tooltips or providing information to the player, as well as giving them options. It kind
Or
of is
hell,
like,
just be able to click on the alert icon and see where it's trying to draw my attention instead of taking me to a page of alerts. Right?
yeah,
Because that's the one thing is that it says, your henchman is fighting someone, which you have minions, which are kind of, think, Despicable Me, your yellow guys, right?
mm-hmm.
And then you have henchmen, which are, think, like Jaws and James Bond, right?
Okay,
High level, very powerful, but one shot henchmen that, if they die, it's game over for them. It will say your henchman's fighting someone, and you click the icon for the alert. It just takes you to the page of alerts. It doesn't take you to the fucking henchman. You have to do like 3 or 4 more clicks on a completely different area to get to the henchman page to be able to scroll to them. And it's just why?
yeah. So a rather large lack of quality of life, sort of common air quotes common sense features like clicking on the alert, taking you to the alert, but it doesn't do that. Like,
yeah, it takes you to the page of alerts that gives you the master list of all the things that's going on. But if you click the alerts there, it still doesn't do anything.
yeah,
Which is also why. And also, a big complaint of Evil Genius 1 was that the world domination screen, the world map, was so passive, and they made it more so.
yeah,
It's just that you could set it up for, and have 2 or 3 hours of gameplay before you even have to worry about it again, because your evil crime networks all provide passive income as well, and they generate passive heat over time. And once you get to a certain threshold, depending on the tier of criminal network going on, the area will go into lockdown if that happens too often for a particular flavor of the 5 forces of justice. I think it's 5 or 6. It'll generate a super agent that will start roaming the map. But like I said, you have to go to it so often that I actually had something happen that demanded my attention on the world screen, but there was no alert for it because, like I said, it was queued up for something else. And that's the other thing, is that some of the side stories start drawing more attention to the world map. But it goes from hour-long missions to, okay, well, you have 1 minute to respond to this, while having to try to manage your base and do everything else. So it goes from one extreme to the exact opposite, right?
mm-hmm.
It just feels like it needs some more spin and polish,
Right.
and honestly, probably a little bit more content, because, like I said, you go from the research tree is just so barren, and it does propagate on some things from the side stories, but then whenever you're researching the side stories, you're stopping your primary research because you can only research one project at a time. Never mind the fact that you have an entire wing of scientists, right? It just doesn't make you feel like an evil genius. It makes you feel like an adult.
Well, that sucks. That's like the worst thing that you have said. It doesn't make you feel like an evil genius. It makes you feel like a big old dummy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about a game I've talked about before, but it's new DLC. MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, The Legend of the Kestrel Lancers. This is supposed to be the second and last big DLC for MechWarrior 5. There's supposed to be a couple more small ones, but it had been announced by PGI that the MechWarrior 5 dev team, most of them were moving on to work on the next project, and there were just a few that were working on final patches and updates. There's some files in the game that suggest like a future DLC for like the Solaris, like gladiatorial arena, and then maybe a couple of other things that have been in MechWarrior Online, sort of being dropped into MechWarrior 5.
What about fun gameplay?
That's Legend of the Kestrel Lancers. My biggest problem that still has not been resolved by any of the official DLC is that the Mech Lab still sucks. So you got to go to mods for that. But as far as gameplay goes, Legend of the Kestrel Lancers makes MechWarrior 5 feel like a complete game. And I hate that games do this. I'm not giving it credit for like, I guess it is now a complete game. You can go buy it.
That's kind of the problem, I think, with Evil Genius as well.
Because it took two massive DLCs to make the game feel like a complete whole game. Because the storyline in the base game is terrible. It's barely a story. The story missions themselves are fine because they're, much more scripted than the random stuff that you find while you're just wandering the galaxy map. Legend of the Kestrel Lancers is like a full-blown multi-mission campaign. I mean, it makes it feel like an older MechWarrior game. It makes it feel like, MechWarrior 3 or 4 maybe, that had the, quote-unquote linear story campaign, where that there are a few options and a few bonuses and a few things you can get on the side. But once you start the Legend of the Kestrel Lancers, like DLC, like it pops up on your map as like a contract, and you get some lore and sort of the explanation for what the mission is. And it's like, all right, if you accept this, you're along for the ride until it's done. So make sure you're prepared before you start. And it gives you some basic recommendations of like, you need X number of mechs and X number of pilots, and you need to have like this level of tonnage for your mech drops, and then you're good to go. And in total, it's 17 missions. There's 3, and then there's a little bit of a break. And then there are 14 more that make up this linear campaign that you're in. And they're all bespoke custom missions. None of them are relying on the random generation. I mean, there's a couple of the same sort of like mission types. The basic mission types are there, like defend a thing, destroy a thing, recover some things.
What about stomp on a thing?
Stomp on a thing. Oh, there's a lot of stomping on the things. But you get taken to unique maps as opposed to them being the randomly generated maps for all of the levels. There are new unique characters with unique dialogue, and things like that. Like, it feels like an actual game, as instead of like an afterthought bolted onto, the like a career mode where you can just like go explore the MechWarrior universe. And it's a solid MechWarrior game. There's a couple of antagonistic characters. You have some allies that, with some, mission options of like go to A or go to B, and you can get different mission results based on which thing you do or how well you do and how many bonus objectives you complete. I mean, it's an honest to God single player story campaign.
It only took them how long?
3 years? 2.5,
3
record. Years?
Better than Star Citizen.
Better than Star Citizen. So, I mean, that's great. It feels like playing MechWarrior 3 or 4 from a story perspective. They've made a lot of small improvements and added things that they had promised way back in the base game. Infantry show up in certain missions to harass you. They've added city maps, like actual city maps. In the base game, there is a, quote, city, which is like, a few city blocks of buildings out in the middle of nowhere. But these are actual city maps. Either they are massive maps that have the outskirts of a city and then you can wander into a city, or they're just maps that take place within a city and the whole map is city block fighting. They've adjusted the base AI and base weapons and things to make them feel better. I don't quite know how to say it any other way than that. Like, most of for example, in the base game, the ballistic weapons are weird. They don't feel like cannons. they feel like you're just like lobbing. They feel like odd, like 17th century, like cannonball type things with like really low speeds and really weird ballistic arcs. They haven't fixed that, but they've improved a lot of the missile weapons and the way that missile lock-ons work. And your lance mates are smarter by default. I mean, all this stuff is better with mods. So the whole thing of like get mods and do that.
You don't have to completely outfit them with one type of weapon now?
No, you don't. They still really struggle if you put them in something that's like a fire support mech. They still haven't figured out how to keep their distance to make full use of like long range missiles. But at the very least, they will, as long as you set up weapon groups for them ahead of time, you can mix and match, and they will do pretty all right. Generally speaking, it's better if you give the quick commands to attack or defend a certain location. But even if they're just like tagging along with you, they do a better job. They've tweaked the spawn rates. So that you're not completely swarmed by vehicles in every single map, every single time, which is good. Because, I mean, I could fight, a lance or two lances of enemy mechs, no problem. But it's the constant, never-ending stream of vehicles that, would spawn and make a beeline for your location. Like, they changed the way that the spawns work, so that doesn't happen anymore most of the time. There's a couple of maps and a couple of game modes that it kind of happens, but there's no more infinitely spawning enemies. It used to just be an infinite spawn unless it was one of the missions that had a predetermined amount of enemies. But now every map has only got so many sort of resources that they can deploy, and there are spawn triggers for them. If you get too close to a certain area, then they'll spawn, instead of it just being like a constant, never-ending swarm from off the map. So missions feel beatable on the higher difficulties without resorting to completely like cheesing the game's AI or internal systems. So, it only took them 3 years, but they finally created a game that feels all right on its own. Still better with mods. I played it for a while in the base game to just kind of check it out. And then the newest version of the Merc mod dropped, which is the big overhaul mod that I personally use. There's a couple others out there. But what it does is that it copies over the mech lab from MechWarrior Online and uses those hard points. So you get a lot more mech customization. You can actually change out engines.
Also known as being lazy in development.
Yeah. But, I mean, you can change out your mech's engines and your mech's structures so you can actually treat them more like how you can in the tabletop. And in every other MechWarrior game that has existed where you can customize your mechs. So that is good, because that's still like the biggest issue I have with the game is that you can't customize your mechs enough in the base game. With the weird way that MechWarrior 5 does its slots. MercTech adds a bunch of other stuff too, tweaking difficulty options for vehicles, spawn rates. It uses what does it call it? Tabletop ammo management or something like that, where that you actually have to buy and replace like ammo for all of your weapons. So you even though you might have 2 tons of ammo on this thing, like when the bins run dry, if you don't have any more in your ammo stores, then you got no ammo. And I kind of like stuff like that because I've been playing a lot more of the tabletop, in the last year or so with Megamech. So I like having, persistent ammo and persistent armor damage that you have to repair. It's got a system for increasing or decreasing the quality of your mechs. Like every time one of them gets cored out, its quality rating drops until you take it to like a refit facility and restore it. Which I like stuff like that. You can turn all of it off in the mod if you don't want any of that. It's got a bunch of options for rescaling. It's got a sort of a more quote unquote realistic volumetric scale. I kind of like it when things are weird and the mechs are like comically too big. I like that, but you've got options for stuff like that. It overhauls the ballistics weapons, changes up the talent tree, like imports a bunch of the AI fixes that some other mods like Standalone have fixed. So 2 thumbs up. Love the mod. 1 thumb up. Legends of the Kestrel Lancers makes MechWarrior 5 a decent game.
Congratulations, you added a campaign.
Congratulations, you added a campaign. I think probably the best way to play it, because it okay, so there are multiple starts you can do for career mode. And there's one that specifically starts you on the Legends of the Kestrel Lancers. If you want to play it and you've played the game before, import one of your other saves, because you can do that. When you start a new career mode, you can import any campaign or career mode playthrough, and it gives you all the mechs and all the money. You lose the pilot skills and your pilots, like you have to recruit new pilots and train them, but you get all your mechs and all your money. Play a playthrough, get a lance of assault mechs, then start over with the Legend of the Kestrel Lancers. That's my recommendation for if you want to play it. It's a doozy. The first 6 missions are pretty doable with any loadout, and then it very quickly is like, nah, dog, this is a war zone. Like, some missions later on do benefit from running a lighter lance, but you're in a fucking war. So sometimes they call you out to be the tip of the spear, and if you don't have a lance of assault mechs, you're fucked. So I think I would have been screwed over if I wasn't using the mod, which adjusts all the weapons and yada yada, all the granular details that let me be able to sort of outmaneuver the AI. But if you're playing this base game, you definitely would have been fucked, or I would have been. So, anyways, wait for it to go on sale and buy like a bundle on Steam or something that's got the whole thing for like $20. I think that's the sweet spot for where this is at. Unless you're like a mega fan like me, in which case you've probably already played it and probably like it. So yeah, that's it for games that I played, at least for this week. I could put more, but keeping it even. You did one, I did one. So yeah, ready to move on to the news?
I guess so.
Take a sip of tea, which is no longer hot. It's very lukewarm now. Mm-hmm. Our first news topic of the night, which is kind of a editorialized amalgamation. Gaming industry giants continue to consolidate their holdings.
So, well, not in the last week, but the week before, Sony announced that, hey, they're buying Bungie, right?
Yep. Which is interesting. We talked a couple of weeks ago about Microsoft buying, or in the process of buying Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, which they're on FTC review now because, right?
Yeah. But anyways, this game companies, big companies in general, are always buying other smaller companies to, get something from them. It's increase their own size, buy a piece of technology, or to acquire the rights to something, depending on what industry you're in. So gaming companies buying other gaming companies is pretty normal. I mean, we've joked for years about EA in its graveyard with all the companies it acquires and then shoots and pushes into, the big ditch that it's dug. But a company as big as Microsoft buying a company as big as Activision Blizzard on the heels of buying another really big gaming company, Bethesda, is, that's shots fired across the industry. And there have been in some of the circles that I, visit for gaming news and things, conversations of Microsoft becoming gaming's Disney, and starting to buy up all of the companies and all of the properties to have them all under their roof. I don't know if that's totally accurate, but I do get the sentiment there of like, this feels like a different type of acquisition. And Sony, also, an international massive conglomeration that has its hand in many different industries, most of them in the tech space, not all of them, but most of them in the tech space. But obviously Sony is not just a gaming company. They have their hands in all kinds of computing applications and chip manufacturing and the music industry. And
Yeah, but Sony's also very fragmented on that one.
yes, but so Sony, like Microsoft's recent moves here, are enough, I think, to have your other sort of giants in the industry taking notice, maybe even shaking in their boots a little bit. To me, this feels like a symbolic move. Bungie is not the development studio that it once was. Certainly, they're making money. I don't want to imply that they're like about to go under or whatever. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but they seemed to be doing all
Not
right.
with Destiny 2 still ongoing, because, right?
Right. But Bungie, was famous for being the Halo developers. I mean, they did other things before. They did things other than that before they moved on to Destiny. But like Halo is what Bungie, I think, will always be known for to most people.
Sorry. I wanted to get the Destiny 2 numbers right now.
Yeah.
So, Destiny 2 numbers right now, as of recording, peak today was 62,532. The reason why I'm chuckling is that it's between Team Fortress 2 and Wallpaper Engine.
Dang. But anyways, this feels like something that's more symbolic to me. Sony being like, okay, we're gonna announce this because we don't want Microsoft to feel like they're getting too big ahead, right? Like we're still in this game. This used to represent you, and now we're gonna own it. Like you better watch out. Like that's what this feels like to me. I could be wrong, but that's the sense that I get from it.
Also, and boy, this can sound wrong, but let's go with it anyway. A Western company being bought out by a Japanese company. There's going to be a big shift in corporate culture.
Yes. Probably. I don't know what Bungie's corporate culture is, but I would imagine that it would change.
I mean, I know this is an old example, but I just think of all the infighting that the different branches of Nintendo has had over the years. Nintendo of America versus the Japanese head, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you are looking at a corporate culture with a vastly different culture behind it, buying out a company from a completely different continent, I can't help but wonder, just how much are they going to have to change things, right?
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I don't know how I feel about all of this. On the one hand, in the short term, all of this sort of positioning and acquisitioning and posturing will be good for the consumer.
For the short term, at least.
But I think in the long term, we're going to wind up with a gaming industry that looks very much like the film industry. You're going to have a couple of giants, or maybe like one sort of monolith, and then a couple of giants underneath it. And they're going to own and run everything. And it's going to be even worse than it is now for like stale game design and shitty business practices.
Basically waiting for the Disney to arise, right?
Yeah.
Which you brought up before recording that Microsoft is getting there, but I'm not 100% convinced on that one, because honestly, if I had to say one right now, just by sheer size and reach, Tencent.
Yeah. Tencent's massive. Most of their holdings, as far as I know, are in the mobile space, but that doesn't make them any less of an industry giant.
I mean, honestly, EA is really falling off. They're doing their own thing, sure, but they've had a massive bungle on the latest Battlefield. The Sims is still ongoing. And yes, I know FIFA is absolutely massive, and their sports games are absolutely massive, but they're also stale. That's a captive audience, as is the Sims, and right?
Yeah, they've kind of got those markets locked up, or mostly locked up.
And I'm just looking at the EA on the show notes. There's going to be a chart that was originally posted on Reddit for Microsoft, Take-Two, the Embracer Group, EA, Tencent, Sony, and Ubisoft for their holdings, also known as the Skittles bag of Rockstar flavors for Take-Two, the Ubisoft blank for Ubisoft, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking at EA, I'm just thinking, how many of these are just name only? So Maxis is pretty much just by name only attached to The Sims. PopCap, pretty much name only. Codemasters is focused on a handful of racing games, and that's it. DICE and Sledgehammer is going back and forth on Battlefield. So, right?
And Star Wars. They've gone back and forth on a couple of Star Wars games. I can't remember which ones, but I mean, there's not many. Yeah. I just don't remember which studio is where. But yeah. Yeah. Tencent, like you said, has got a lot. So does Embracer Group, which I had never heard of Embracer Group until I saw this.
This is a holding company. So, right.
Yeah.
I mean, and they also have some historic names like 3D Realms, Deep Silver, THQ Nordic. Trying to think of see another one on here.
Gearbox? Did you say Gearbox?
Yeah, Gearbox is on there. Sorry, it's further up than what I was. I mean, it's just some historic, important, or at least for the PC area, gaming companies.
Yeah. So, but Microsoft. This chart is already including Activision, Blizzard, and King in Microsoft's holdings. But Microsoft's got Bethesda. They've got their first party studios: Treyarch, Obsidian, Activision. Which not Activision. Turn 10. Microsoft is making some plays. I mean, we talked about this last time that we talked about this briefly, that Microsoft buying an Asian, probably Japanese, but generally just an Asian developer or two or publisher or two would be sort of the only thing that I think it would need to really sort of solidify that idea of, like, air quotes, the Disney of gaming.
Assuming, of course, that, like I mentioned, that the corporate cultures don't clash and they ruin the company, right?
That's true. That has to.
Because imagine if they bought Capcom, I think was one that was considered on the table. Imagine if they bought Capcom and just ruined it, right?
Yeah.
Or, bought Square Enix and the cultures just weren't compatible. And well, can you really ruin Square Enix at this point?
No.
It's like sour cream, short of some sort of mold growth. Can it really go bad?
Oh, what if they bought Konami?
Hey, I thought we were talking about gaming companies, not Pachinko games.
You're right, but still, that would be a trip.
Bought Konami kicking and screaming back into gaming.
Right. I mean, I'd be okay with that. They bring him kicking and screaming back into the gaming sphere.
Or just buy out Kojima, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting situations of what if. But I think Microsoft is also very hesitant to try to build up a monopoly because, they've been there before.
Yeah. And not that they're hesitant about building one up because they don't want it, but, they don't want to accidentally poke the bear.
Yeah, they did that once before with Internet Explorer. They know better.
Yeah.
Or you would think, at least, right?
You would think they know better, or that they think that they could get away with it right now.
Or they're going to be more shrewd about it.
Yeah. But regardless, I mean, every great once in a while, the sleeping, slumbering giant that is the SEC wakes up and bitch slaps somebody and then goes back to sleep. It's like,
don't forget scratches its ass first.
Right, scratches its ass and bitch slaps somebody and then goes back to sleep. So Microsoft probably doesn't want to be made the example of again.
Yeah, which, like I mentioned briefly, is that the FTC is looking at or reviewing the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So we'll see how that one plays out as well.
Yeah.
And they're expected to close it in the Microsoft's fiscal year of 2023. So it won't be done this year. Probably looking towards the middle of next year. For that to finish off, and then the flood of games to come to Game Pass, right?
Yeah, I wanna talk about that a second. Microsoft's acquisition, beyond what we mentioned earlier, like short term good, long term almost certainly bad for the consumers. I think Microsoft will come in and, in an attempt to gain some good PR, will clean some house. I don't think they'll completely clean house, and even if they did, like people like Bobby Kotick and other like high level executives, like they get their golden parachute. So to them, they don't care. I'm sure they don't care. Or if they do, the huge ridiculous stacks of cash, will be comfort for them. Right? But I imagine that Microsoft will come in and do some reviews and some audits, and there will be some firings and some improvements in corporate culture. Microsoft has got a pretty good track record for having diverse people in management, women, people of color. I don't know how well they do on LGBTQ representation, but I remember I think it was last year, they released a thing that was like, check out our diverse executives. And it had their, executives for each of their departments listed. And there were, it was pretty evenly split between men and women. And like I said, persons of color. Like Microsoft tries to make a big deal out of that. And regardless of whether or not, how much of it is for show, I do think that there will be some improvements to the Activision Blizzard corporate culture.
Well, considering what we've heard about Activision Blizzard, that's a low bar for improvement.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, but also, like, they will not get justice. I don't want to, I don't want to sound like too negative, but I'm just being realistic here. Like, the people abused and affected will not get justice, because the justice that they would get would be, a type of restorative justice that doesn't happen in the United States, and probably rarely only happens elsewhere in the world. Executives going to jail, being stripped of their cash and their power, and being given to the workers. Like, that's the most restorative justice that those people could get, and that doesn't happen in the United States. Every great once in a while, there's a big thing that happens that looks like it's restorative justice, but I'm old enough now and have paid enough attention to notice that, like, you get the big headlines of, like, so-and-so awarded $10 million. And then you read in the article below, it's like, $10 million was the initial award. However, the judge knocked it down to $3 million. And then the lawyers got their cut of $1.5 million. And then the taxman came and got his cut. And then the person was left with $50,000. And it's like, $50,000 is not nothing to normal people, but also it's a far cry from restorative justice. And I feel really bad for those people. Like, I would love to bitch slap Bobby Kotick all the way to jail, but that's not going to happen. So, corporate culture improvements, yes, probably. Maybe even some high profile, like, firings and things. Thumbs up. But at the end of the day, like, these people are going to be swept under the rug, and I hate that. So, there's me being a downer.
Thank you, Sarah.
Whoa, now let's cool it. I'm being a downer, not a moron. So, anyways, do you have any other thoughts on either of these two topics, or sort of any
Not
way?
Really. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered this one, at least for now. There's obviously going to be more information about this because, these are two long-term acquisitions. So,
Yeah.
we're probably looking at, this time next year is when it'll probably be coming up close to finalized.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, speaking of long-term acquisitions, how about long-term, told you so?
Yeah. I'm getting hit with it being like, disable your ad blocker. And I'm not going to do that. So give me a minute to find the, or to look up the Google Cache version of the page.
Yeah, so Stadia reportedly being deprioritized as Google focuses on selling the streaming tech to third parties. I mean, Google has a track record of being a little ADD, right?
Yep. Google,
Google is the tech version of EA. They buy out things, usually for the tech behind them or for the talent, with no interest in the actual, product. And
Yep.
while Stadia is their own product, it's still that sort of culture going on, and they get bored with it when it doesn't work immediately. And
Yep.
yeah. I remember when Stadia came out, I think it was that E3. They had so many ads on E3 talking about the future of gaming is Stadia. Turns out, no.
Nope. Nope, it's not. It's interesting to watch to immediately abandon the headline in the article for a moment. I'll come back to it, but to abandon it for a moment. It's interesting to watch how over the last couple of years, since Stadia was announced and competitors sprung up, like how sort of game streaming technology has evolved in these couple of years. And it really hasn't gone anywhere. It seems to be that in the last couple of years that phone gaming has circled its wagons for the people who play games primarily on their phones. And everyone else has said, "No, I don't think I want to do this game streaming thing. I'll buy X device. It'll be the Switch or it will be one of the numerous PC handheld devices that have sprung up over the last couple of years. It's if I want to take my gaming portable, I'm going to buy a portable games console or a portable, gaming PC experience.
See, Steam Deck.
Yeah, Steam Deck is, a lot of the review embargoes are starting to come off on Steam Deck. Linus Tech Tips put theirs up.
Interesting things. I haven't gotten to watch the actual video of it, but someone did a teardown of the Steam Deck, one of the development models. I'm not sure if it was Linus or what. I just saw it pop up on Reddit while I was doing my news sweep, and all right.
Yeah, I know Linus has done one. I don't know if that's the one that you saw, because I've seen several show up on my, tech and gaming YouTube feed. I haven't watched any of them yet. I want to, but I just haven't had a chance. But yeah, it seems to be that the PC gaming space has, instead of going for game streaming, gone to that. And I have so many, this is all speculation. I have no evidence for any of this, but I think that the markets that this primarily is being pushed in, which is the United States and Europe. Europe is a much more mixed bag than the United States, but a lot of European countries are in the same boat with the US in having like really shitty internet and unreliable internet access in anywhere if you're not in a major metropolitan area. That the consumer in the areas that these are being pushed to are saying like, no, we can't depend on the internet in our area to support game streaming. So we will instead pick other portable options if we can't be at our desk. Laptop gaming still exists as a market, and I know people who still have primarily gaming laptops, but I think there's been an interesting divide pop up between the traditional desktop folks and the handheld PC market. The handheld gaming PC console thingies, whatever you want to call those. It's neat. I thought, I mean, we both said this in the beginning. Stadia and other streaming services are never going to work in countries, like if you're primarily marketing them to countries like the United States, the UK, France, other, those sorts of European countries that don't have good, solid, reliable internet. It's never going to work. And, because the backbone infrastructure isn't there for it to work. And that seems to be kind of playing out in the quote unquote hand of the market, because people aren't interested in streaming.
I remember OnLive, it had the same problem where it was ahead of its time because people just didn't have the internet connection for it.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure who actually bought the tech from OnLive. It might be Google, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of applications for improved streaming technology for a lot of stuff. Video streaming, game streaming, productivity tools. We're going to continue to see, I think, just in general computing, a shift towards more cloud-based applications, like very intensive cloud-based applications for video editing, photo editing, other intense computational projects. Any type of industry that needs to crunch a lot of data, we're going to see a lot more shift towards cloud-based applications for those, which are going to require, improvements in streaming technology in some way. And so I think that this is going to be an industry where that type of tech, or this is going to be a sector of the industry rather, where that type of tech gets spread around, and they're going to find sort of, weird unconventional uses for different types of things. That's like, oh, this really streamlines our data, or this type of compression is, really useful for X application. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff come out of this. And who knows, maybe one day we'll all stream video games to our whatevers, our future cell phones or future tablets or whatever, maybe. But I do think that the technology will see other applications. Just, it ain't here, Chief. Not in gaming.
Well, also, one of the primary problems is just the fact that, at least in the United States, it's so goddamn big, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at needing, at minimum, 4 major data centers, and that's just going off, time zones. If you try to go, major metropolitan areas, you probably need one for the Northeast, one for the Southeast, one down in the Texas area. I mean, let's be honest, we could probably skip the Midwest. And I would say probably 2 on the West Coast.
Yeah.
If you're wanting decent pings. And I actually found a Google Cloud Platform Network test, and I'm actually running it in the background right now. So, just seeing latencies, I'm getting, my best one right now is a 50 ping to a data center. And Stadia is run from their cloud platform network, from a few of their different data centers. So getting 50 to 75 pings, with an outlier being, there's a 125. That's nasty.
Where are you looking this up?
This from Cloud Harmony spreadsheet for Google. I'll send you a link to this. It automatically starts running in the background. So,
okay.
And this is pinging all the Google Cloud Storage centers.
Okay. Let's see what I get.
Oh, there's one that has a nasty jitter on it.
I am queued.
Yeah, it takes it a moment to get going, and some of the tests are actually failing as well. But the main thing people focus on is the download requirement as well. But you're not looking at the latency. None of these games that they focus on are, games that don't really require, slow reflexes. They are, action games. They're shooting games. They're driving games. things that a ping of 100 starts to really add up, because you're not just dealing with the latency of from you to the server and having the server determine what happened. You're also having to have that feedback loop. So it's every single decision is delayed by the overall ping.
Yeah.
Which, if you start to have a hiccup, or you are on a data center that is iffy, like Google Cloud Storage West 3, which I realize that's the West Coast, but right? Where I have a nasty jitter on it, and the ping goes from 91 to 225. That's going to make the game unplayable no matter how much download you have.
Yeah. Oh, mine's running the first on the East Coast. It failed Cloud CDN. What is that?
Yeah, Cloud CDN failed across the board for me. I don't know exactly what that is.
Okay. Yeah. I got 75 milliseconds ping for West 2, 97 for West 4.
Yeah, Southeast is way down the list. Then you have like Asia and Europe as well. But yeah, this gives you an idea of, right? Just how varied it is.
Yeah, so I got 42 on East 1, whatever, wherever East 1 is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which mine is a little worse, so I'm pretty sure you're closer to it.
I wonder if East 1 is like Atlanta or something.
Possibly. I mean, there's 110 pings on this as well, so just running in the background.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let it run. It's running them out of order. The first 3 or 4 ran in order, left to right, but so it didn't run the ping for Google West, Google Compute Engine West.
Doom Barrel, especially on the subreddit, that's like, oh, I should have never bought into this.
Probably not.
And
although it's a weird catch-22, like if more people had bought into it, it might not be dying, but it would have to be a good service for more people to buy into it. And it's like, you run into that problem.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here looking at the Stadia Pro lineup as well. So, mind you, Stadia is also a store.
Yeah.
And its primary focus isn't a Game Pass style Netflix of gaming, which might be part of the problem, is that you're expected to go in and buy into their architecture and then stream it, right?
Yeah.
So you have Stadia Stadia Pro, which is essentially their Game Pass, but honestly, there's not a lot here. There's Darksiders 2 and 3, Saints Row 4, The Life is Strange remasters, and then you start getting to stuff. Oh, sorry, there's Control, but then you start getting some stuff like Paw Patrol, Mighty Pup Saves Adventure Bay.
Right.
Or Terraria, which is often down to $1 on PC. And I think it goes down to $5 on Switch, but that's also the Switch tax. It might just be the case of, at least for the Pro, where's the big draw, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as scary as some of the streaming stuff is, I really think Stadia had the wrong approach to it as well. Having the model of buying the game and then, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Game Pass does it better. Where, yes, it is a higher tier for Game Pass. You have to get the Ultimate version, but having the entire library streamable, or what's available streamable, I should say. Having that instead of buying in individual titles, but having the option to buy in, it feels better for the consumer.
Yeah. It's better for the consumer, and I mean, honestly, it just makes more sense. The Netflix style of pay the thing, get access to the entire list. Like, that's good value, you know. Again, I expect it to go away whenever Microsoft buys all of the studios. But until then, good value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I'm still chugging away on pinging all of Google.
Yep, so am I.
I'm about I'm about 2/3 of the way done.
I've only... Ooh, that was terrible. Google North... Oh, wait, that's Asia. Okay, Northeast Asia. I was like, oh my god, my ping is 254 to Northeast Asia. I don't have any lower than 42 at this point, which is the US East 1C, wherever that is.
Mine to US East North Sea is 52.
So
probably slightly closer to you.
probably. Or maybe I just got a little lucky on my packet. It took a shortcut.
Or whatever jumps it does. It gets to the to faster internet quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just not unexpected. It'll be interesting to see just who gets the streaming technology and see if they actually apply it to YouTube as well, because that would be nice, huh?
That would be nice. All right. Yeah. I don't know. You got anything else to add?
No, just pinging in the background.
Right.
So, time for a quick Star Citizen update?
Right, time for a quick Star Citizen update. So, what it's saying is the last download and update is 66 gigabytes.
The last one? As in the last one to download, or the latest?
Yeah, the latest one. Let's say that, the latest one.
So that puts it at
80-ish gigs.
Yeah, I was about to say 80-ish.
Yep.
Almost 90. It was 15 or 16.
It was 16 for the base game, and then version alpha 3.16-1 is or was 66 gigabytes.
Wow.
It's got 54 left to download because I've got it throttled pretty hard.
Yeah, it's almost like you're recording something.
Almost. So yeah, we had one submission this week by Jim to our...
You just went robotic there for a moment.
I see.
Okay, you're better now.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh, we had one submission this week from Jim to our submissions and suggestions page on Discord.
Which this one feels more up your alley. Using some psychology from spying on players, essentially.
Yes. So I haven't read this. I skimmed it before we started recording, and I'm skimming it again now. Do you have any thoughts while I collect mine?
I mean, it's not exactly surprising that there's such a focus on grabbing metrics for essentially building a better mousetrap. Figuring out, okay, well, players like to do this thing. They use the example fishing on there, which I feel, made an example of.
You feel called out?
Yeah, feeling a little called out there. And that players that like to set and grind and do particular actions gravitate more towards this style of gameplay, which this style of gameplay gravitates more to this behavior outside the game. I mean, it's not exactly surprising that they're using all this information, especially as they point out, so many companies make it clear in their reams of in-user license agreement that honestly nobody ever reads.
Yep.
Because if you were to read all your in-user license agreements, it'd be several weeks of stuff. Never mind the fact that everything that you have installed on your computer.
Yeah.
So nobody ever reads it. But they make it clear that they're gathering all sorts of user stuff. So they're basically trying to figure out exactly how to sell you that new shiny NFT.
Yeah. So I had another quick read through it and gathered my thoughts. So data collection and I'll say processing and analyzing is interesting. So as someone who has done, as part of like my college curriculum, working on my master's degree and stuff, I have done research and put together a couple of research papers. I hated doing it. It's not my thing. But that gave me a lot of insight into how research is often done. And when you collect giant data sets like this, you can get all kinds of weird correlations. For example, one that I remember from when I was in school was that it was somewhere in Mexico. I'm just gonna say Mexico in general, because I don't remember like where it was. But there was like this city in Mexico that if you owned
There's
a
city
toaster,
in Mexico?
yes, but if you owned a toaster, you were more likely to not have children. And, that's a correlation, but correlation, as we've so often heard, correlation does not equal causation. And the actual cause for that was that in this particular city in Mexico, if you owned a toaster, that meant that you had enough money to afford creature comforts, like a toaster. And so you were more likely
And they were
to
fucking
be...
the toaster.
Yes. No, you are more likely to be educated, and therefore, by the relative standards for the location and the time, because I think this data was collected in the 80s or the 90s, you were more likely to be like educated and working sort of a quote unquote white collar job, and so you would be putting off having children till later in your life. So having a toaster didn't mean that someone was more likely to be infertile or whatever. It was an indicator that someone had a little bit more wealth relative to the space, right?
Well, it depends on if they proved they're drunk in the toaster.
Yes, how well it fit into the slot. So there's this thing called P hacking, and I don't remember what the P stands for data, but essentially it's if you just gather enough data, you can sift through it until you can get it to say stuff. And maybe the stuff is right, or maybe there is a legitimate correlation there. But if you don't try to measure a specific data set with a specific intention, then it's not really useful for drawing accurate conclusions. And so what all of this says to me is that unless they have some specific intentions in mind with this data that we don't know anything about, at best, they will learn the wrong lessons. Because they're going to look at things and they're going to say, people who play this game tend to behave this way in chat or tend to have these spending patterns. So if we do this thing, we'll get them more likely to spend money. And that may or may not be true because they don't have the context for why people who play a specific type of game are more likely to spend, X number of dollars on a microtransaction.
Yeah, but you're also got to consider that they might also be doing some to-be testing as well on top of this.
Yeah, they might be. They absolutely could be. But, this type of thing, like, yes, they are certainly gathering a lot of our data. Some of it with our permission, some of it without. Most of it, nobody has any clue which is which, right? Because, like you said, nobody reads their EULAs. But unless there's some specific goals in mind in the background, all they're doing is churning out data with pointless correlations. And they will learn some bad lessons and they will stumble into some good ones. And we'll find out in 5 years, what they've actually decided or thought is useful and what they care to listen to the public about and what they continue to push through. The genie is out of the bottle on this. I have heard many people, especially in the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and COVID, and obviously all of my stuff is U.S. centric because I live in the United States. But with COVID and the 2020 presidential election, and misinformation and disinformation and propaganda, and like so many people in the last couple of years have been like, oh, I don't want, so-and-so to have my data. Too late. It's done. The genie is out of the bottle.
You have a phone, right?
Do what?
Do you not have phones?
Right. Do you not have phones? So unless you have very, very strictly controlled every aspect of your life and somehow managed to not overlook anything at all for years and never made a single mistake, the genie is out of the bottle. And this is just the world now. And we're going to see, as companies, both in gaming and out, collect more and more data, what kind of conclusions they draw and what type of products they try to sell us and how they try to do it and how they work to manipulate us with advertising. I mean, there's a bunch of stories for various companies. And I mean, these are true stories. They're not urban legends. They're not anecdotes. These are true stories. Like, I've seen the research papers on them. I've seen the case studies where that, for example, Target or Walmart or, another large store that collects data on its customers all the time have figured out that someone is pregnant or has a medical condition before the person themselves knew it or had revealed this information to other people in their family and sent them targeted advertising. The one that sticks out the most in my mind was there was this teenager who was pregnant and she was looking at stuff at Target and she bought a couple of things that indicated she was pregnant, and Target, sent some targeted ads to this lady's house, and her dad got them in the mail and called and complained, like, why are you sending me all this stuff? Like, nobody in my house is pregnant. And then the daughter was like, actually, I'm pregnant. So these tools can be used to figure out very specific things about us. And it's kind of scary, but we don't know how they're going to play out yet. So just keep living in the world and hope for the best and prepare for the worst, I guess.
But also depends on, are they going to start running little scientific experiments with their player bases? Touring them out, let's say matchmaking, for example, in a multiplayer game, and seeing how that reacts, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hasn't that already been a thing or was talked about as a thing?
There was some patents. Was it EA that was talking about it?
I think it was EA, yeah.
Trying to, if I recall correctly, it was somebody that had a lot of cosmetics being more likely to be put into a multiplayer match with people that have fewer cosmetics than them, to try to goad them into, ooh, that person looks so shiny. Let me fork over some money.
Yeah.
I could be mistaken on EA, but right.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like something EA would do. And my brain is telling me, yes, EA, but we could be wrong. But that definitely was a story that happened last year or 2 years ago, maybe.
So as they get more information to be able to run, these psychological experiments, boy, this is starting to feel a lot like the Fallout vaults, huh?
Yes. Conspiratorial thinking, but it's like, is it a conspiracy if it's true? I mean, it can be a conspiracy. It feels conspiratorial, but these are realistic scenarios that have played out in our world, in our society before, and will again. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I do want to say, I think these things can be used for good, and within the system, there will be good faith actors who try to use the data for good.
Yeah, but gaming companies, no.
No, but not gaming companies. They
will
not.
Or at least the major ones. That's the thing, is that it'll be interesting to see some of the indie companies, or some of the more indie developers, if they start doing this, where they go with it.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine a game that features heavy procedural generation that goes more into using the information that derives from a player, like a horror game, to fuck with you?
Oh, that sounds like my worst nightmare. I don't like that.
Well, that's just the first thing that kind of jumped to my mind.
Yeah.
Find a horror game that puts in little triggers here and there and notices, oh, this player didn't look at the spiders that much. Here, let me put some more spiders in.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, thank you. That's not a game I will be playing.
Or a first-person shooter a story-based one, or a single-player focused one, I should say, that uses the player's actions and how they play to tune the AI to play more responsibly against them. There hasn't really been a lot of focus on, at least as far as I could recall, a improvement on AI for quite a while. So something using player data could be interesting on that one. But also could require a lot more effort than a lot of these game developers seem to want to put in. I mean, we're looking at games where, several years down the road, after several DLC expansions, the game's not bad.
Yeah, the game's not bad anymore on its own.
And we are obviously looking at, kind of pie in the sky, hopeful uses of this particular technology.
Yeah. I mean, we can all imagine the bad ways that it can and probably ultimately will be used for. But it's harder to think of the good things. So we can speculate on the good things more and all be like, yep, that's gonna go wrong somehow. But anyways, I digress. I don't think I have anything else to say. Do you have anything else to say?
Not really, but I've completed all my pings.
Oh yeah, I haven't checked on mine. Go. I'm about halfway through the list. Let's see.
I mean, obviously Asian ones are standing out, but my best one looks like it's still East 1. Cloud storage and compute are both in the 50s. Oh no, Central actually is better for me. It's 37 for a median.
Nice. I don't have any in the 30s. I've got a handful in the 40s, a few in the 60s to 70s range, and then we're hitting triple digits.
Yeah, so assuming, of course, that Stadia would be running on Central 1, it would actually be somewhat playable for me. Assuming, of course, that's a stable thing, but it looks like it's somewhat stable, but this is only a handful of tests.
Yeah.
And it does look like I get low download speeds from that as well, so So do we want to doobly do? It is just past midnight.
Yeah, I've been
and we got a late start.
I've been struggling.
I had the cat wake me up in the middle of the night, kicking me in the head.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still dealing with my post. What's a fun way to call it instead of just saying my post-COVID problems? I got nothing.
As usual.
Yeah. So I'm starting to fall apart a little bit.
So if you wish to send us any community submitted stuff, you do so vglpodcast@gmail.com. Drop by the Discord, which you can find a link to that over at vglpodcast.podbean.com, or you can tweet us vglpodcast on the Twitter.
My voice broke up there a little bit. I went, woo! I don't think it came through. Hey, Rage, why don't you hit him with them socials for you?
Oh, I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me sometimes tweeting over at Gaming with CR, or if you wish to be my friend on Steam, you can do so. I'm Caffeine Rage there as well. And you've been?
I have been me. I don't think I'm going to talk about the YouTubes anymore.
Yeah, you've been COVID-licious.
Yep. But the places where you can find me, obviously here, you're listening to me. You can find me tweeting at JMA4707. I tweet all kinds of things. Serious stuff, funny stuff, shit posts, retweets of sexy stuff sometimes. I had a tweet earlier about this kid who was in my office today, and she was in there with her mom for some therapy stuff, and she just kept asking me questions about my laptop, because I take my gaming laptop to work and I use that for work stuff and then play in my downtime. She was like, "That's a pretty neat laptop you got there." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks. It's it's my gaming laptop." She's like, "Oh, I play video games sometimes. How much did it cost?" And her mom was sitting there, and like her jaw like dropped, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe my kid asked." And she made the eyes of like, and held her hands up like, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Oh, it was like $800. I bought it secondhand on eBay." Like, and then I did some work to, clean it up, applied some thermal paste, and like this, this kid was eating it up. Like, she's very definitely a nerd at heart. And I'm not sure if the mom was more appalled at the girl for asking questions about money, or for me as an adult for just engaging that conversation with her. I don't get people who are weird about discussing money. I think that's a taboo that needs to like die in our society, because it only helps the people who are in charge of things. When we don't talk about finances and what we get paid and things like that, like, it only hurts us to not be open about that stuff. Like, I get, don't give your bank account details to people. Don't like walk around being like, "I got $1,000 in cash in my pocket," because you'll get shot. But whenever someone asks a question like that, just answer honestly. I digress. I tweeted about that today. You can also find me if you want to see me doing tabletop stuff. I participate in 2 tabletop games that get streamed on Twitch. Over at twitch.tv/runicarts. I play a sadistic vampire man, and I'm running a BattleTech tabletop game.
Yeah, but what's your character?
A fat sadistic vampire man. So really, I'm just playing myself with vampire powers, because I don't have any real life vampire powers. That comes on the next COVID booster shot I get. That's my vampire powers.
See, I'm just hoping to become Magneto.
Right.
Gonna take a bucket and cut it out for my helmet. Get a cape.
You'd look good in a cape.
Yeah, Batman.
Oh, makes me think of the Scatman song. I don't know why. Skibidi yop do do do. I'm the Scatman.
Yeah, but we've learned it's no capes.
No capes. It's a good movie. Anyways, yeah, those are my socials, with a little story thrown in,
and completely off the rails, which is about normal for us.
Which is really on the rails.
Which, if you wish to tell just how off the rails we've gone, you can do so at VGLpodcast@gmail.com with your letters, voicemails, game-related topics. Tweet us at VGL Podcast, or drop by the Discord. You find a link to that, as well as all our other stuff, over at vglpodcast.podbean.com. And if you wish to spread the love, you can find us on your podcatcher of choice. Our lovely, lovely patrons have made this madness possible. You can find out more at patreon.com/VGLpodcast. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod. You can find his work over at incompetech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye-bye now.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.